Today on Martha Bakes, I'm going to show you how to make 3 different tart shells and 3 different tart fillings. The first one is a chewy chess tart, and it has a cookie crust and a wonderful, sticky, chewy, delectable filling. These little tartlets are lemon meringue tartlets made in a pâte sucrée dough. Best lemon tarts you've ever tasted. And this spectacle, this spectacular tart, is called a Tart Tatin. It's really an upside-down apple tart with a caramelized syrup and a wonderful pâte brisée crust. Today on Martha Bakes. Pâte brisée is the basic pie crust. You need 2 sticks of butter per double crust pie. And I'm going to cut the butter, it's icy cold, into thirds. And I find that it really works best for making this pâte brisée if you have the butter cut up into small cubes. And number 1 rule, everything should be cold, including the flour if possible. And work quickly. That's another golden rule for making the pie crust. And now cut this into 1/4-inch pieces. So here we have our butter all cut up, ready to use. And then we have our food processor. Put 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, I use coarse kosher salt, and 1 teaspoon of sugar. And you can, if you want, just pulse that like that. And add your butter, 2 sticks, 1/4-inch pieces. And now watch this. You have to do this quickly. So you just pulse until you get the butter broken into small bits. You can see little pieces of butter. That's exactly what you want. Just as long as they're not big pieces. There. Now we're going to add 1/4 to 1/2 cup of iced water. I'm going to pour very slowly down the outside of the feeder tube. I think it's done, and it's about 1/3 cup of water. So when you pick it up in your fingers, go like that, it holds together. And pastry has to be chilled before you roll it. And you can just wrap it into 2 flat rounds. So now it still looks crumbly, but it won't look crumbly when I compress it. Flatten that out using the plastic instead of your hands because you don't want it all over your fingers. You want to retain as much of that dough as possible and just wrap it up. And the same with the second batch. Put this right into the refrigerator and chill for at least, I think at least an hour, and it's ready to roll. So now let me show you how to make the pâte sucrée. 2½ cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 2, 3, 1/2 teaspoon of salt in the pâte sucrée. I'm going to just pulse that a little bit. Now I'll add my butter. And it is 1 cup of butter again. So basically up to this point, you have just a slightly more sugar in a pâte sucrée. And now pulse. And you can add approximately, 1/4 cup of ice water. And I'm going to add that right to 2 large egg yolks. You can mix this up a little bit before you pour it in. And pour this right into your dough. So the dough is a little more yellow, a little bit more rich, and more sweet. So again, because we're going to make freestanding tarts with this pâte sucrée, and I need to get 6 out of each, I'm going to form the dough rather than in rounds. I'm going to form it into 2 rectangles for easy rolling. So now we've mastered 2 doughs. Pâte brisée, which means a short pastry, and pâte sucrée, which means a sugary pastry. Very easy. And now that you've mastered the pastries, we're going to make the tarts. The first tart I'm going to show you how to make is an apple tart tatin. Now roll your dough first. This is it, one piece of your pâte brisée on a floured surface. Roll it about 10 inches or 11 inches in diameter. It's to put over the apples in a 9-inch cast iron skillet. Once rolled, get this right onto a parchment lined baking sheet and just chill it again until your apples are done, your caramel is made, and you're ready to top the apples with the pastry. Chill it for about a half an hour. And now get your apples cored. These are Braeburn, nice golden fleshed, pink skinned. Take the core out. You need about 5 or 6 apples and cut the apple into quarters. Keep 1/2 for your center. Here we have our apples. Squeeze a little bit of lemon juice over them. I like the flavor of lemon, and I like apples not to turn too brown. Okay, so now it's time to make the caramel. The caramel gives that glistening golden brown coating to the apples. So into your 9-inch cast iron skillet, add 3 tablespoons of water to 3/4 of a cup of sugar. This makes a lot of great caramel. You want the sugar to dissolve. It will melt very nicely right here in the skillet. And have 4 tablespoons of butter ready. So there we have the beautiful color. You see, all of a sudden, it really goes. Add your butter and just stir in. This stops the cooking and softens the caramel so that it will be soft enough so it will come out of the pan. Let it cool, and there you have your beautiful caramel. Find your half an apple. This goes right in the center, and your quarters of apples get placed all the way around the caramel. And what we're going to do now is put this right back on the stove, very low heat for about 20 minutes. Then we'll take it off the stove, put our pastry on, and bake it in the oven. So now the apples have cooked for 20 minutes. I think they look very nice. Now let this cool before you put your pastry round on top, and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. So now our apples are cooled, and here is our pastry. We're going to place this over the apples, and what I do is tuck down the excess right inside the cast iron. This gives a little bit of a crust to catch the juices when you invert the tart tatin. It makes a pretty presentation too. Yes. Okay, so just get that right into the oven, and I suggest baking this on a parchment-lined baking sheet, just in case you have some bubbling over. Get this into the oven for at least 35 minutes. You'll see the crust will turn a nice golden brown, and the apples will be nice and tender and caramel coated. Now the tart tatin has cooled down, but not all the way. If you let it cool all the way, all that caramel will stay in the bottom of the pan. And you don't want that. You really want it on top of the apples. Now invert your pedestal. And I love this one because it has nice little sides on it. And it will hold the caramel juices. And the juices are hot. Be very, very careful that you don't get anything on you. And we're going to very quickly turn it over. 1, 2, 3. Oop. I know you're dying to see what it looks like. So am I. I'm going to peek. I guess I can show it to you. Look. That. It smells so good. And that is a spectacular tart tatin. Try it. Everyone will adore it. Chewy chess tart. I like serving this by itself or with just a little bit of unsweetened whipped cream. And now for a cookie crust. This is made out of vanilla wafers, and you can grind these up in your food processor. Get them very fine. Okay, so there's your very finely ground Nilla wafers. Add 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 2½ tablespoons of sugar. And stir in your melted 6 tablespoons of butter. So that's your crust. So simple. I know your family will love this pie. Let me show you how to form this one. So fun to make because it is a no-roll crust. Spread it as evenly as you can in the bottom of a removable bottom 9-inch tart shell. This is like a quiche pan, tart shell pan. And with your fingertips, just pull up about 1/4 inch thick on the side. You can make this crust in advance. And now to flatten the bottom, you can just use the bottom of your measuring cup like this and really compress the crust. You're going to chill this before baking. What a neat and simple crust. It goes into a preheated 325-degree oven for 12 to 15 minutes. And now the filling for the tart, 3 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk. And add 1/2 teaspoon of the very best vanilla. There. To this, add your dry ingredients. 1 cup of granulated sugar. When I tasted this pie, I just fell in love with it. You can't eat a lot because it's very rich, but it is very tasty. Because really, there's not much in it except sugar and eggs and a 1/2 cup of packed light brown sugar. Pack that in. And now this gets incorporated. And there's one surprise ingredient which gives a crunchiness to the filling that I think is very appealing, and that's cornmeal. 1 tablespoon of fine cornmeal. And add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And one last ingredient, melted butter. 1 stick, 8 tablespoons, 1/4 pound. This is what gives the chewiness to the filling. Pour this in. Once filled, get this into a 325 oven, preheated, and bake this for about 35 minutes. This chess tart is done. Let this cool to room temperature and then chill it for an hour or so. And we have one that's already chilled right here, and I can put this on our serving pedestal. Oh, so pretty. Watch how easily the ring comes off. And you can just put this right on your decorative serving dish. And that is your chewy chess tart. It's like eating little bars of the best candy. So now we're going to make the lemon meringue tartlets. You're going to love these. Your guests are going to love them. We're using the pâte sucrée for the little straight-sided tart shells that are going to be baked in these round molds. These are little flan rings or tart rings. So this should be rolled into a rectangle approximately 10 inches by 15 inches. What you want are 6 rounds. So cut your rings. We have that 4.5-inch cutter, which really helps to make the right size. Work carefully and quickly because as this warms up, it gets very difficult to work with. Loosen with your little offset and then drop very carefully into your tart ring. And then just gently mold these into the ring. And so with your thumbs, without long fingernails, if I had great big long fingernails, I would be cutting this right into pieces. So it's better if you're a baker to keep your nails moderately short. I've never had long fingernails. doing all the gardening that I do and all the dishwashing that I have to do. Nails just don't stay. So once you get all the edges trimmed off with the point of a sharp knife, like this, just go around. You're going to put a few little fork prints in the bottom. This will prevent any big eruptions in the bottom of the pastry. This is called docking. Now, I would chill these just a little bit, then insert a paper round into each tart shell. And that's going to be filled with the weights that will prevent these from collapsing when pre-baking. Then bake them in a 350-degree oven for 20 minutes. Take the papers and the beans out and bake them until they are golden brown, maybe another 10 or 15 minutes at 325. And we have these already done. Oh, these look so good. You can see almost through them. They're so delicate. That's what a good tart shell is. And now, if we beat up our egg whites, we can fill these with the prepared lemon curd and make our lemon meringue tartlets. You need 6 egg yolks. Add 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. Get that nicely incorporated. Half a cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice goes right in. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. So put this on the stove on a medium flame and constantly stir and stir until it starts to thicken. And I'm adding the zest of 1 1/4 lemons. That's a lot of zest, but boy, does it give a great lemony flavor. And now stir with a wooden spoon. This is a very hot stove, so I have to be very careful not to curdle the eggs. So the curd is ready. And the way that you test for doneness is on the back of your wooden spoon, just draw your finger like that. If it doesn't all run back in, it's done. It will have a nice thickness to it. Now add 1 stick of butter cut into small pieces. This too enriches the curd, and when it's chilled, will thicken the curd very nicely. And to avoid any lumps whatsoever, we're going to put it through a fine sieve. Look at the color and look at that texture. And put a little piece of plastic wrap on the surface of the curd to prevent a skin from forming. And get this chilled before you fill your tart shells. Great lemon curd. Now we're going to make the meringue topping for our lemon meringue tartlets. Start with 4 egg whites in the bowl of your mixer, fitted with the whisk attachment. And add 1/4 of a teaspoon of cream of tartar. This will help the meringue stay dry. And as this starts to beat, add 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. So while that's beating, I'm going to fill my tart shells. Here's the lemon curd, nicely chilled, about 1/4 of a cup into each shell. You can spread this out with a small offset spatula. Let's see how our meringue is coming. Just starting to get voluminous. And I like to add about 1/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla. And add 2 tablespoons of this beautiful sanding sugar. Ah, soft peaks. And now we're just going to pipe big stars on tops of these gorgeous tartlets. You can put these in the freezer at this point. Then you can brown them right before serving, or you can brown them now. I think I'll brown them now so you can see what they look like. So beautiful. This meringue browns like magic. And so here you have the best lemon meringue tartlets you have ever tasted. Enjoy.